certainly do that. So Melanie Trecek-King is a speaker, writer, and educator specializing in critical thinking, information literacy, and science literacy. She's the creator of Thinking is Power, which is a twist on the phrase knowledge is power, and it empowers individuals with skills to make better decisions and protect themselves from falling for misinformation. An associate professor of biology at Massasoit Community College, she teaches an award-winning general education science course and works with middle and high school educators to integrate these concepts into their curricula. Melanie is the education director for the Mental Immunity Project and CIRCE, C-I-R-C-E, which is Cognitive Immunology Research Collaborative. And she's a fellow of the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, which is CSI. She's twice been a featured speaker at their conference, SciCon. Welcome back, Melanie.
Thank you, Rob. And actually, thank you, everybody. It's such an honor to be here. And I'm in awe of your mission and what it is that you do. And so thank you. Should I just share my screen now?
Yeah.
Sure.
So I wanted to tell people a little bit about, you were going to do, I think, a more standard talk about, information and how you judge. And then we started talking about it. And you asked me something like, did I ever share my story with other people in the skeptical movement? And I said, no, you don't talk about religion there. And then you hadn't done that either. So you decided you were going to revamp your presentation to incorporate your own personal story here. So I'm very interested to hear this.
Yeah, actually at SciCon, I gave a talk about misinformation and I mentioned my story in there. And several people asked me about it. And I've talked about it briefly, but I've never really laid it all out there before. And so I suppose this is a safe place and you all know where I'm coming from. So um, please be gentle with me.
Oh, don't worry. We have a vicious troll stomper, so don't worry, you're safe here.
My mom's name is Glenda, and I just like women named Glenda are just powerhouses, and I just yeah. Okay.
So yeah, go ahead, share your screen.
So I'm going to talk about misinformation and how we come to our beliefs, and mostly I'm going to talk about my story. Misinformation is a trap in that it's alluring. The reasons we fall for it is because they appeal to our emotions and biases. They bypass our critical thinking capabilities. And then once we get in there, misinformation is sticky. Like it's difficult to dislodge because it's become part of our belief system. Also, we tend to think that our beliefs are evidence-based and that, of course, our beliefs are true and evidence-based, or why would we believe in them? And most of the time, our beliefs were not the result of following evidence to a conclusion. We've convinced ourselves in hindsight that that's true. And this is even more so important to remember when we're talking to others, because we think that the evidence that convinced us is what will convince other people. And that is not necessarily true. So, okay, ready? I'm a little nervous, I gotta tell you. This is my hometown.
This is a good place to do that. Don't be nervous.
Okay. I feel really vulnerable and exposed here. Okay, so my hometown is Logan, Iowa. It's rural western Iowa. This is Main Street. There is a stoplight there, but that's a new thing when I was growing up. Back
I
when I
have
was
to ask Glenda, is this more rural than Murfreesboro?
Yes, Murfreesboro is a subsidy of Nashville. And I wanted to ask, I probably have been to your hometown, Melanie, because I think Ragbri.
Oh yeah.
Yes, me and my mother, we are little cycle rats and we have done Ragbri. So I want to say, yes, I have been in your hometown, and every little small town in Iowa is like teeny.
Well, to be fair, Ragbri is a party on a bike. And so you may have even eaten at my family's restaurant, which is right up there on the left. It's not there anymore. I am a third generation Western Iowa. Actually, my mom, Her grandmother crossed the country in a covered wagon and settled in Western Iowa. My dad is a Bohemian out of Omaha, but he grew up in the town. Let me skip here just a little bit. The restaurant here that I was referring to is the Dairy Delight. So my grandparents owned this restaurant and my parents bought it from them. Fun story. My mom burned it down the first day they owned it. And
What?
Mom, if you're watching, sorry. It was in the family for probably 40 years. It's no longer there. I spent my entire childhood there, basically. And this picture here, I took this in just outside of the town. The town is 1,400 people. And the neighboring town is about 10 miles away, and it's about 200 people. And together, the school district is about half the county, and I graduated with 39. And I went to preschool with most of them. So very small. Now I've gotten lost in a cornfield. It's terrifying. We played flashlight in cornfields growing up, so it's basically hide and seek in a cornfield. We had level B roads in Iowa are the dirt roads that aren't maintained. We had the best parties on those level B roads. I have to go out on record and say I am super grateful that we didn't have cell phones and social media growing up, because I am pretty sure I would have gotten in trouble. And the joke in small town Iowa, and I have found this to actually be true, is that there's an equal number of bars and churches.
I can believe that. I visited Iowa recently, and that tracks. I also went in a cornfield, and it was not what I was expecting at all. They are dense and spiky.
Yes, and there's snakes and insects, and like they twist and turn around hills, and so you can legit get lost in them. I mean, they're 9 feet tall, right? So very dangerous. Super fun. Okay, this is me. My grandma made this dress, and this was before this sad. This is sad, actually. In second grade, my best friend, who is part of another religious group, um, where the women all wore dresses, they didn't cut their hair, like really fundamentalist. Well, she got brain cancer and she died. And as her dying wish, she was a huge fan of Laura Ingalls Wilder and Little House on the Prairie. So she had a Little House on the Prairie party. So I wore the dress my grandma made me to the party. All this is to say, the community was very small and tight-knit. And the church was really central to that community. I did not take the picture on the bottom, but it is the high school and middle school kids. There's one school for K through 12, and it's all of that part of Harrison County. But they regularly have prayer meetings before school. And so this is them for their community. Not participating in church, not being part of this is being isolated, right? This is part of being in these communities. My parents did the best they could, right? You sent your kids to church. That was the right thing to do. There were other churches in town that weren't as extreme as mine was. But this one was amongst the more well-attended ones. We also had a library in town. We have a library. It's a Carnegie Library. And the librarians are largely pastors' wives. So the library is full of not science, but religious information. I went on their website, and this is still what's listed on the church website as what they believe. So the Bible is the inspired word of God, literally true, that God created the heavens and earth in 6 days, and on the seventh day rested, that God is a union between a man and a woman, and that life begins at conception. Christ is coming back soon. The revelation, the fiery pits of hell. If you aren't saved, then God's going to come back and punish you soon, and you are going to burn for all eternity in the fiery pits of hell. Importantly, this is an identity-based belief, right? It is the community, it is the church, it's all one and the same. And actually, it's also very strongly overlapping with politics, where Christian, conservative, Republican, in that order. This is a famous Mike Pence quote. Before I show this, do you know who Mike Pence, I'm sorry, of course you do, Steve King was, not the author.
Oh, I was about to get excited. Yes. No,
Oh, no.
no, not that Stephen King.
So Steve King was a representative from my district from 2003 to 2021.
Oh, I do remember this guy. Yeah.
In 2019, House Republicans actually censored him for being too racist, and he lost the election after that. Here, for example, is a tweet from him.
If you want, I can read it for people
I'm
who are listening. Content warning. This is what Steve King said on the internet. I spent Juneteenth all day in the hot sun, hoeing and pulling weeds and thinking about what it would have been like to have been a slave. At the end of the day, I thought about what it would be like to be an aborted baby. I got to see the sunrise and the sunset. I just don't even know what to say about that.
so
Wow, that was in 2022.
yeah. For those of you who don't know, I have married a Black man. We've been married for 25 years now, and it was very uncomfortable to go back there, as for obvious reasons. Okay, so very rural district, very religious, very conservative. We were young Earth creationists. I'm going to give you some of the arguments that I was taught, and I'm sure you've heard these before, maybe even from someone who's believed it. I obviously have changed my mind on this, but the point is, we were taught these things not just as evidence for creationism, but to have a way to convince ourselves that we could rebut any argument that might come at us, right? They were basically arming us to be able to, well, here's why that's not true. Okay, so God created all life in earth 6 days, rested on the seventh. This is about 6 to 10,000 years ago, 6 to 8,000. Here's the order of creation in the 6 days. Before the fall, the world was perfect. There was no death or predation. Dinosaurs, for example, were herbivores because there was no predation. And of course, humans and dinosaurs lived at the same time. The other explanation for life on Earth, evolution, is from the devil. So good people believe this. Now, in about 4,000 years ago, Noah's flood was sent to punish the wicked. Noah built the ark, and the animals 2 by 2 came to be saved. We were taught that the water from the flood came from a ring of water around the earth, and that water, the barrier of water, shielded the earth from harmful radiation. It led to a stable, perfect climate and perfect living conditions. People could live for hundreds of years, right? In the Old Testament, what you see is men living for hundreds of years. And we were taught that the evidence for the flood was everywhere, like the Grand Canyon, for example. The strata that you see is not geologic time, but actually the order of sediment laid down through the flood. Some of the evidence that we were taught about creationism that debunked evolution, there were no transitional fossils. There was a constant search for the missing link. And of course, in biology and geology, The joke is that once you find a missing link or a transition, you've created two new gaps. So there's a constant search for a link. Nevertheless, even the links that do exist, they are not actual links because God created everything in its current form. Irreducible complexity. The eye is an example. Here is the bacterial flagellum, how each of the parts of the flagellum are too advanced to have evolved independently. They only work when they are all together.
Oh,
Radiometric.
what luck that you picked that. We just learned about the bacterial flagellum from one of our speakers a couple of weeks ago.
Who is
Feel
that?
so accomplished. Rob, which episode was the one with the bacterial flagellum? Was that the one with it wasn't Forrest Falkai, was it?
It must
Maybe
have been. It must have been Forrest.
it could have been Forrest. It was either him or John Gleason.
I don't know why he would be talking about that.
I don't either. It must have been Forrest. But anyway, we just learned about this, so what luck that you brought it up. Sorry, go ahead.
Can I go back to can I go back to the one with the ark? This is what's always bugged me when I was taught this as a little kid, and I don't think I ever believed it past like extremely young age. So all right, so Ken Ham has the Ark Encounter, which I know you're aware of, right? And he's got dinosaurs in cages, right? And so, like, were you told there were dinosaurs on the Ark, or dinosaurs are fake and there were bones are put there by Satan to trick us that there were dinosaurs? What was your belief?
Okay, so I don't remember dinosaurs in the Ark. That's an interesting question. I do remember the devious God, where God would put evidence out there to lead people astray.
Wow, that really is freaking devious.
Yeah. Oh, we had that too. I remember there was a debate among people at our church. I think it was I can't remember what the belief at our church was. I can't remember if they were pro-dinosaur or anti-dinosaur, but there were some people that thought the dinosaurs went on the ark, and then there were other people that thought that they didn't make it on the ark, and then there were still yet a third group of people who, like you said, thought it was a trick. I
Mm-hmm.
think they attributed it to Satan trying to trick us with fossils, but
The explanation I get the least is Ken Ham's actually, because like if God took the trouble, because he had to drive all the animals to the ark, because how'd the penguins get there, and the koalas, right? If he drove the correct kinds of dinosaurs on the ark, what happened to them afterwards? They got off and the lions ate them right away? They were the food? Like what the hell? That's a bizarre concept to me. I'm going to
it's
take the
almost
time to
like,
put them in the cages on the ark, and then there's none when we get off. They're all gone.
yeah.
Bizarre.
Yeah, lots of questions, obviously. I mean, once you start to pull at that thread, it kind of falls apart. At the time, you're taught not to question.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Radiometric dating obviously is wrong. All of it is wrong. Scientists misunderstand it. And actually, in my preparation for this talk, I was getting on some of the sites that promote these things, and some of their arguments seem pretty sophisticated. Like if you don't know what it is that you're talking about and you're prone to that belief, if you don't have the expertise and you're prone to that belief, they can be very convincing. And so when you get into some of the math they throw at you here is like, oh, sure, that seems right. Okay, obviously the second law of thermodynamics, where evolution is an increase in complexity, and that violates the second law of thermodynamics, which is an increase towards entropy. Random chance versus perfect design, right? We were taught that God's design was perfect and that evolution was random. And it's not perfect, and it's also not random. But in this belief system, the God is perfect, and so it doesn't make sense. Like it's not. That is a comforting thought. Chance is not a comforting thought. Okay, evolution has never been observed, or no one was there to see it. When I this is a really common belief, not even just amongst people who hold these beliefs, but like how would you know? Nobody was there to see it. So in my classes, we talk about, crime scene investigators. So you're going to show up on the scene and go, well, nobody was there to see it. So how are we ever going to figure out what's going to happen? What happened? And we even know that eyewitness testimony is not necessarily reliable. There are other ways of getting at it, but yet this is superficially quite convincing. Okay, obviously we evolved from monkeys, and if there are still monkeys, then why, how could there be monkeys if we evolved from them? And yes, this is a real Tim Allen tweet. Obviously, it's just a theory. Here's Mike Pence saying that we should just teach it as just a theory. Also, that it's faith-based. It takes just as much faith to believe in evolution as it does to believe in creationism. Scientists have committed fraud. So Piltdown Man is an example, but there are a few other, Nebraska Man, other examples of not just fraud, but mistakes. And this is a theme that we're going to see, which is that if you drill down far enough, it's a conspiracy. Because there's really no other way to explain why the vast majority of scientists or reliable sources disagree with you. It's a conspiracy. So in this case, here's all of the reasons they might be conspiring, and here's how that is they're doing it.
So,
Okay.
so for the people listening to this on audio only later, immortality, occult, higher consciousness, some words I don't even euthanasia. Why is that in there? This quantum something. Oh my God, immortality. A lot of different conspiracies. So yeah, this is an interesting one to me that they must believe every single person involved in biology who has anything to do with this and somehow is on the conspiracy. Or do some people believe Satan has warped their mind, so it's not a conspiracy as such, but they've just been tricked?
Yeah, that's a good question. Satan obviously is constantly trying to steer people away from God's plan, and he is devious. And so, yeah, some maybe are just unwittingly duped. But definitely, yeah, conspiracy. I gotta tell you, this putting this together brought back a lot of memories, not necessarily good ones. So yes, obviously believed all this. Now here's the thing. This came from a place where, let me just keep going. When we form our beliefs, how I got to these beliefs was not through following evidence to a conclusion, right? I was a kid, everybody around me believed this, or seemed to. The church, the teachers, the librarians, the politicians, the whole community bought into this. And there was not just our community believed this, but outsiders, they're bad, they're evil. And they believe these other things. This is what separates us, we're good, from them. So when we are interpreting information, we're not a blank slate. We start with the inbuilt biases and so on, but we get most of what we believe from others, and it swims in a sea of trust. Trust turns out to be so fundamental in understanding how we come to our beliefs, because we can't verify everything by ourselves. So a lot of times what we're doing is, even when it comes to scientific arguments, I am an ecologist, scientists studying various other aspects of science. I'm going to have to, at some point, trust that they're in a system that is self-correcting and evaluating that evidence. But we're not taught that most of the time. When we are trying to decide if a news source is biased or should I trust it, right? It comes back to trust. Do I trust a politician? Do I trust it? Whatever it is a trust-based argument. And once we've come to those beliefs, we have an amazing way of finding justifications for them, ways to convince ourselves that we were right. And the end result is that we're really confident that we're right. It seems to us, it feels, that feeling of certainty we assume is based on evidence, when in fact, it's based on other factors. And then when we're making sense of new information, like I'm a biologist now and an educator, and for a long time, scientists have operated under what's called the information deficit model, which is that people don't understand evolution, climate change, whatever it is, because they don't have enough information. So how do I fix this? How do I convince them that evolution is real, that climate change is real, that vaccines are safe and effective? I need to give them more evidence. It's probably not, our beliefs probably aren't as evidence-based as we think they are, but even if they are, they're not a blank slate. Our beliefs form a web. It's a, imagine all of your beliefs forming a web where at the center are our core beliefs. These are the ones that are most important to us, like our identity defining beliefs, the ones that attach us to our social groups. But all of our beliefs are connected. And so if we're trying to address a young earth creationist and say, well, you know, that thing about transitional fossils, you're wrong. We actually have lots of them. So I'm going to go into that little section there and I'm going to pull at it and I'm going to tell you what you believe there is wrong. The problem is that belief is connected to a bunch of other beliefs. And that overall belief system is their mental model of reality, how they understand the world. We can't just pull it out and replace it with something else that doesn't fit with the rest of their beliefs. And then how we think about information. Jonathan Haidt has this great metaphor, the elephant and the rider. If you are familiar with Daniel Kahneman System 1, System 2, they're basically the same thing. I just find elephants to be a bit more charismatic and easier to relate to. So imagine in your head, you've got an elephant and then a rider on top of the elephant. So the rider is the part of the brain that is capable of thinking critically. It's the part that we think of as us, like, here's all of the evidence I have to come to this belief. The problem is it's sitting on top of an elephant, and that elephant is big and powerful and really hard to control. The elephant is always on. It's the automatic part of our thinking. And it is biased. It's emotional. It's tribal. It likes to take shortcuts. And so it then uses its existing beliefs, what it wants to be true. It hates uncertainty. Uncertainty is uncomfortable. It uses biases, cognitive biases and heuristics, all of those, and it jumps to a conclusion. And then the writer, instead of going, yeah, actually, let me think about that. Is that right? Let me evaluate all the writer is like, yeah, okay, that sounds right. Here's all the reasons why my elephant is right. And so instead of using our writer to think through information in an objective way, uses its powers of reasoning to justify what the elephant already wanted to do. So basically, the writer, the elephant is our gut, and the gut tells us what to think. And then the writer tells us how. I've already come to the conclusion. Here's the evidence that I need to support that conclusion. And so we think that we are reasoning. There's a body of evidence. I'm evaluating all that body of evidence in the most objective way, using reasoning and logic and coming to a conclusion. Most of the time we're rationalizing. We start with the desired conclusion. That is what came from the people that we trust, or split-second decisions. And then we use motivated reasoning and confirmation bias to cherry pick evidence to just give ourselves what we feel that we need, that we're right. I would like to tell you that being smarter or more educated protects against this, but there's actually some evidence that shows that it makes this better at rationalizing. The smarter we are, the better we can be at justifying beliefs that we arrived at through illogical ways. Our emotions are guiding our selection and interpretation of facts. They're driven by our desires and our biases. We're basically acting like lawyers. We've come to a conclusion. I'm not saying all lawyers are bad, but a lawyer has a predetermined conclusion in mind. Here's the conclusion. And then here's how I find to get there. PR department, if that's better. The writer is the PR department for our elephant. our elephant wants to do this, so sure, let me find a way to do that. Okay, so all this is to say, we aren't as rational as we think we are. And then enter misinformation. So misinformation, question so far, do I need to stop and pause?
No, this is great. I love the recap with the elephant. It reminded me I have my woolly mammoth with me here today joining us for this talk. So
Love it.
from the Waco Mammoth National Monument in Texas. No, this is great. And I love this graphic, this comic as well. This is
Yeah.
really good.
Okay, so misinformation is information that's false or misleading. It does not, misinformation is a broad category that can include anything that is varying degrees of false, but it does not depend on intention, meaning you don't have to intentionally be lying. Disinformation is a subcategory of misinformation in which you're intentionally being deceitful. I personally don't like to have to rely on those categories. Like if I accuse somebody of lying, what that means is I'm not necessarily fighting about the misinformation itself or what's wrong, but I'm trying to prove that they know that they're not telling the truth. And I think that's not necessarily a battle that's worth fighting. There are times that we know somebody's lying, in which case we should point that out. People don't like to be lied to. But by and large, this is just things that are wrong. And there's a lot of misinformation and information basically ride together. So anytime there's information, there's also false information. And there's a lot of information these days. And so there's a lot of misinformation. There are lots of types of misinformation, and this is not necessarily the talk to cover all of these, but some of the broad categories here. A false information is anything from completely made up, like fake news, sorry, the air quotes here, deep fakes, hoaxes, whatever it is. Imposter content is impersonating another source. It could be anything from like a phishing email to impersonating a celebrity or a person. Manipulated is selectively editing videos, photos, audio, whatever it is to tell a story that is not true. Misleading information is either taken out of context or clickbait. So that's where the headline is sensationalized and it's just fishing for clicks. Propaganda, which isn't always bad. And there can be propaganda that is also completely false and a lie. But often propaganda is promoting a particular cause or viewpoint through like framing and emotionally or inflammatory language. Unverified is either rumors or like reporting errors. Somebody got something wrong. Maybe it's just an honest mistake. Problematic could be like satire. I mean, people fall for satire. Or sponsored content, native content, native advertisement. People have paid for you to see that, but it looks like legitimate content. It does not necessarily mean that it's false, but it does mean somebody had a vested interest in convincing you of some things that you should know that.
Yeah, somebody before mentioned the birds are not real, and was satire. But there are people who saw that online, and they are so into conspiracy theories that they buy that one too. That is
Yeah.
scary.
Oh yeah, it's like the Onion. I love the satire articles that they post, but I have run into occasions where somebody thought it was a real story, and that is very problematic. That's not the point of it. It meant to be a joke, but it's so hard to tell now, I think, online. People are so I don't know if it's that people are bad at identifying misinformation or if we're just so inundated by so much information that we don't have time to evaluate it. I don't know, Melanie, maybe you can
Yeah, actually,
enlighten
and
us.
where I'm going to go next is why we fall for it, but that's a really great example. The major reasons for like bottom line why we fall for misinformation, it confirms what we already think is true. It triggers emotions. it's repeated. Actually, The Onion is a really fun example. Kim Jong-un, The Onion ran a story, I think it was in 2012, that Kim Jong-un was named the sexiest man alive. And like North Korean media just hook, line, and sinker promoted it. Like the Western media named their leader the sexiest man alive. When we want to believe something, that's pretty powerful, and so we tend to fall for it.
Oh no, can you imagine? Oh my goodness.
I can
Yeah.
also imagine our new president getting very jealous about that.
I'm going to leave that one.
Just saying.
Science-related misinformation, pseudoscience, and science denial. I'm going to talk about that in a second. The conspiracy theories across the bottom, because conspiracy theories tend to be the root of all other misinformation. Meaning, a conspiracy theory fundamentally is a way of interpreting information to confirm a pre-existing narrative, in that they're immune to evidence. All evidence confirms the conspiracy theory. There are real conspiracies, of course, but conspiratorial thinking leads us to buying these explanations that are just, they provide us with cover. They're motivated reasoning 101. Why aren't scientists saying this? Well, they're conspiring, right? So we're going to talk about science-related and conspiracy theories in a second, but why do we fall for misinformation? Four major reasons here. Intuitive thinking. All of these are our elephant. So intuitive thinking are the heuristics and biases that our elephant is prone to. Some of the major ones here are repetition. Our brain assumes that if I've heard this before, it's easier to process, so it must be true. This is really a problem in echo chambers, because if we've heard something a lot, we just say, oh, yeah, that's right. Confirmation bias is when information that confirms what we already think is true is assumed to be true. And taken together, like if you're in an echo chamber where the information is confirming your bias and it's pinging around a lot, then your intuitions go, yeah, that sounds about right. Social influences are the community around us. So social proof is accepting what others believe. People around me believed in creationism. Our tribe, we want our tribe to be right. Our identity is wrapped up in our social identity, and it hurts for our tribe to be wrong. Misplaced trust. This is when we're trusting sources that align with our beliefs or identity as opposed to those that are actually reliable. Psychological factors are the kinds of things that motivate our elephant. Desires, biases, values, identity, emotions, identity, all of these are driving our reasoning. And then actually, Carol, what you were getting to is sometimes we just get overwhelmed. So cognitive overload is there's so much information coming at us that we just can't think critically through all of it. So we get tired and take shortcuts, and we rely on some of the other factors. So all of these then contribute to the misinformation resulting in us having false beliefs. Now, once we have those false beliefs, they're very hard to dislodge. And this is the problem, because misinformation is bypassing our critical thinking capabilities, appealing to our vulnerabilities, and then once it's there, it's sticky. If I were to take home three of the biggest factors here when it comes to misinformation, the first one is solution aversion. This is our tendency to want to deny a problem in which we don't like the solution or we don't like the consequence. So, for example, climate change denial tends to largely be from its origination, like the first scientists involved in denying climate change. That came from being anti-communist and anti-government and anti-regulation. If I'm inherently opposed to government, then I am motivated to deny a problem that might require government regulation. If I think that accepting evolution means that I'm not special, or that there is no reason to be a good person, or that I'm just an animal, then I'm motivated to deny that conclusion. So we don't like where it's going. Also, once our ideology or our worldview gets attached to it, like people don't say they're anti-science. We all inherently understand that science is reliable. So what you find is people using what seems like science to justify the beliefs to themselves. So I'm not anti-science, but I am anti-vaccine. So how do I use science to justify that worldview? And then finally, our identity. This graphic here is meant to show how we portray ourselves to the world. This is me. This is who I am. This is what I believe. It's the necklaces I wear, the t-shirts I wear, the bumper stickers on my car, the on social media, the little "this is who I am." All of those are ways that we've attached our beliefs to our personal brand. Once beliefs are attached to our identity, they're very hard to dislodge. We don't want to be wrong, right? It's not the belief that's wrong, it's us that's wrong. And so the more important these beliefs are to us, the harder it is to dislodge these. The more we've invested in these beliefs, the harder they are to change. And then we go one step further and we attach our identity to our social identity. We are right, they are wrong. We are good, they are evil. We get a lot of our self-esteem through the groups that we belong to. Humans are social creatures. We spent most of our history in small tribes. Those tribes were the source of our protection. Going against our tribe meant losing our community and protection. The social psychologist Brooke Harrington once said something to the effect of, if there is an E equals MC squared of social psychology, it's that social death is worse than physical death. We don't want our tribe to be wrong. We are rewarded for defending our group's beliefs, especially in the face of criticism from them. Tribe can literally trump truth. Now, here's the thing. We are obviously in a time where there's a lot of polarization and tribalism. How likely is it that our tribes are right about everything? Yeah, that's rhetorical, right? It's almost impossible. Have you noticed how much easier it is to tell them they're wrong than to tell us, hey, are we right about this?
I remember I had a professor in grad school who said they were teaching conflict resolution. They said, how many times have you been having this long, protracted argument with someone and finally came to the conclusion, oh, we're having this argument because I am completely irrational and everything I'm saying is stupid. Probably not ever. So why are we assuming that about the person we're talking to? That's probably not the whole story.
Oh, yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah. So we have to be really careful about this, because if our goal is truth, then we need to realize our own limitations and our group's limitations. That is very hard to do. Okay, so these are the major reasons why we fall for misinformation. Let's talk specifically about science-based misinformation and conspiracy theories. So science-based misinformation falls into two broad categories: pseudoscience and science denial, where pseudoscience is accepting unsupported, false, unfalsifiable claims by dressing them up as science. The motivations here are that we want to believe. Identity, hope. Like, hope is really powerful. People who fall for alternative medicine, they need hope. Why do I go to Target and buy another beauty cream? Well, maybe this is the one that makes me look super young, right? Why do I buy this diet? Well, this is the one that's going to help me. Hope is really powerful. Because we want to believe, our standard of evidence is low. Science denial, on the other hand, is refusing to accept well-established science. And it is motivated largely by identity, vested interests, solution aversion, denial of anthropogenic climate change, evolution denial of the safety of GMOs, safety and efficacy of vaccines. All of those well-established science, but I don't want to believe it. So I set my standard of evidence impossibly high. Now, importantly, there is a difference in both of these categories between those who promote these things and might even know better and those who fall for them. In particular, like climate change denial, that is a well-funded industry denial campaign that was purposefully established to sow doubt in what we knew about science, so that we didn't take action, didn't regulate their products, right? People who fall for them are victims. But once these beliefs, no matter where they come from, once these beliefs get attached here to our identity and to our social identity, they're very hard to change. So, for example, here we have the Journal of Creation, which is from the Institute for Creation Research. They've got a journal. It like a really well-organized type of pseudoscience goes through all the motions to make it look like it's sciencey. Big words, it looks like a science journal. It's not peer-reviewed, right? It's not original research. It's throwing shade on evolution. And it's largely like, here's why this is wrong. It's not good evidence. But if I want to believe this, then I'm probably going to fall for it. It's convincing. Science.
So for people who can't see this, one is Journal of Creation, Dry Valleys of Jurassic Coast, England, Periglaciation or Noah's Flood. And then there's an early settled science cartoon, The Science is Settled, Galileo. So yeah, I have a question on one of the subtopics in the Journal of Creation. What is endosymbiosis? The end of the endosymbiosis theory. Do you know what that means? Or did they make that up?
No, they didn't. Endosymbiosis theory was proposed by Lynn Margulis, and it is the origin of eukaryotic cells from, so a eukaryotic cell is a cell that has internal organelles. And they evolved from prokaryotic cells, like bacteria that don't. Vertebrates, all multicellular organisms are endosymbiotic. They are eukaryotic in that they have internal compartments. You have to be able to support multicellularity. But where that came from was a mystery for quite some time. And the endosymbiosis theory proposed that some of the major organelles, primarily mitochondria and chloroplasts, came from free-living prokaryotes that were engulfed by another cell and started to function as part of the cell. Evidence for it is like chloroplasts and mitochondria have a lot of characteristics of bacteria, of prokaryotes. They have single strands of DNA in a circle. They replicate like prokaryotes, but within a larger cell. So what they're trying to do here is say that one of the fundamental theories in the origin of eukaryotic cells is wrong. I haven't read the article for what they say in here for why it's the end of endosymbiosis theory, but endosymbiosis is very well supported. So
So they're slamming something that's well-supported science in order to promote creationism. Interesting.
And to book in here on science denial, you all know the Galileo Gambit. As a science communicator who communicates about this stuff, this is the kind of thing I hear about all the time. Well, Galileo was branded a denier, and he was right. And he went against the consensus, and thank goodness he did. And basically everything that they're saying there is wrong. Like first, Galileo proposed something that was not far out of field with Galileo, an astronomer who proposed that the sun, not the Earth, was the center of the solar system. That wasn't so out of field at the time. Also, scientists did not persecute Galileo. The church did, because saying the sun was the center, not the earth, meant that maybe the earth isn't the center of everything. Also, Galileo had evidence. The reason we remembered Galileo wasn't because he proposed something new and amazing and, new and far out field. People do that all the time. People disagree with a consensus all the time. He proposed something and had evidence. There are people who deny consensus all the time, and they're just wrong. And so if you're having to go back 600 years to make a bad example to try to say, well, look, he ended up being right, so I must be right, it's not necessarily a good look. But again, if you're in this, if you want to deny well-established science, this is convincing.
Do you know who Terrence Howard is, Melanie?
Oh, yeah. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so if people know, he's the I think he was a TV star at one point or a movie star. But yeah, he's gone full wackadoodle and he made his own math up and his own physics and his own everything, how planets are made. And I think I heard him use the Galileo Gambit. Well, they're going to prove that I'm right, just like Galileo was right.
Except I bet he didn't bring evidence.
He's got a book. He wrote a book. I think it's a handwritten book. He self-published, and it's
Oh boy.
bizarre.
Who
And
is
actually, if you listen to Terrence Howard and don't know what he's talking about, it's it seems convincing, right? Like if you did not know anything and were prone to believe that kind of thing.
Plus, his delivery is he is so sure of it. He's a good communicator in that regard. He's putting positive energy out there when he says these things. He's not hesitating at all. All of mathematics is wrong. All of physics is wrong. All of astronomy is wrong. I know better.
And why aren't scientists taking him seriously?
Well, because he's making stuff up that is not right, and he
No,
doesn't
but
get it
to
peer
him,
reviewed. He just pushed it out there. And actually, Neil deGrasse Tyson, he sent Neil deGrasse Tyson his work after, he yelled at, oh, no one takes me seriously. And so he sent it to Neil, and Neil reviewed it. And then he falsely went on the Joe Rogan experience and said, Neil didn't give me the time of day. Oh, yeah, he did. He actually made a very long video going through all the nonsense in Terrence Howard's publication. It was bizarre.
yeah. My point was, if you dig down far enough, my guess is conspiracy would show up. Okay.
Now I'm on a deep dive over here. I've never heard of this before. This is going to take up several hours of my life, Rob.
Oh,
Now.
don't do it. Don't not
Yeah,
do it.
danger.
Coleman Watts
Coleman
did
Hughes. No,
fantastic,
not Coleman Hughes. Coleman
reaction.
Watts.
Yeah, Coleman Watts did a fantastic review of him. So if you're gonna watch one thing, just to get the full scoop, it's about a half hour long.
And just you also need to subscribe to his YouTube channel.
Yes,
Oh,
absolutely.
yes. Okay, I'm on it.
It's think it through, right?
Yes.
Think that through. Think that through.
If I go back here for a second, the point here with denial is that it's an impossibly high standard of evidence, and so there's always a trying to find out here, this is wrong. And one of the things about science, how it works is that it doesn't prove anything, so it's actually using one of the characteristics of science against it. I just gave away one of the answers to the questions. So conspiracy theories, if you dig down far enough, the root of misinformation. This is me at a Bigfoot museum in Nebraska. That's all I'm going to say, because
Oh, for people who can't see it, Bigfoot is actually grabbing Melanie. So you proved Bigfoot was real.
totally.
Oh, but he's taxidermied. So is he dead, or is
Oh,
there
is he
supposed to be
taxidermied?
more
It's a
than
still
one
photo.
of him?
I can't tell that.
I don't know. I'm
I
assuming.
feel like this museum is the subject of an entire other talk. Because wow, something else. But the woman who runs this place, look, she's a true blue believer, right? She had all kinds of evidence, 3 buildings worth of evidence. She had sightings along rivers, which apparently proves Bigfoot is real, and tree breaks, which Bigfoot does tree breaks and nothing else can do tree breaks. And what was fascinating is if you kept going through the museum, there was a link to creationism in that something about, doesn't the Bible have giants?
Oh,
Like,
yes. Giants, the Nephilim, in the Old Testament. Yes.
that's them. And also, there's a creationist out of Texas, and I'm forgetting his name too. So if somebody could put it in the chat, that would be great. But he is so out there that even the other creationists, like Ken Ham, think that he's too far out there. He's the one who has the supposed footprints in the sediment on the riverbank between humans and dinosaurs, and it's long been shown to be not. It's just not true. But all of this plays into all of the things that biologists and archaeologists would say are the different human ancestors. All of those are, here's Bigfoot as an actual living example. They're not actually human ancestors. It would be something like, I wish I could actually say this in a way that made sense, but it didn't make sense to me at the time. All I got was she was a young Earth creationist, and to her, Bigfoot meant that it proved the story. Even more so, if you keep going, I finally got to a point where I said, okay, but where's the evidence? So she said there was this town in Kansas that had bodies. There was a graveyard of all of these Nephilim. Is that what you called them, Kara?
Yes, they were said to be like half angels or fallen angels that were interbreeding with humans in the Bible, and they were said to be giants.
Okay, well, she apparently claimed that there was a bunch of their bodies buried along a river in South Nebraska. And she, at one point, called the University of Nebraska Science Museum and had a long late night over the night conversation with somebody who was like, shh, we need to talk in hushed tones because those have all disappeared because the government took them. Okay, which we got
Okay.
eventually to the conspiracy theory. Where's the missing evidence? It was hidden. Evidence that would disprove the conspiracy was planted, right? It's a conspiracy. And so here we've got one thing these educational TV series on evolution used to make their story look so convincing are millions and millions of years? No, dollars. Okay. Again, we get down to why are scientists conspiring? In this case, it's for the money, which I always find super laughable. Whenever I talk to my students about this, they're like, oh yeah, fame and fortune. Great. Can you name a famous scientist? And this was usually before like Fauci, but okay, maybe they'd get Einstein or Neil deGrasse Tyson. Okay, let's keep talking about, and that's all they got. Okay, well, how about fortune? How's this working out? Like here are scientists, they drive Hondas, they're paying off student loans. I'm still waiting for my check in the mail. I am not part of a conspiracy. So, but this is convincing, right? This must be why they're hiding it all. This came from an Atlanta area high school biology textbook. It's no longer there. But notice there's a link between evolution and creation. Okay, we've got evolution from Satan. Creation is from Christ. From Satan, we have humanism, divorce, pornography, homosexuality, racism. And then Christ, we have creationism. Good stuff, bad stuff. Science denial and pseudoscience are like two sides of the same coin. If we want to deny well-supported science, we have to fill it with something else. We have to replace it with something that seems scientific. So sometimes the pseudoscience fuels the denial, sometimes the denial fuels the pseudoscience, but they're constantly working in tandem with each other. A quote here from philosophy of religion professor, evolution has primarily been an attack on religion. Okay, this is how it's viewed in the creationism community. It's an attack on religion by militant atheists who wrap themselves in the mantle of science, right, in an effort to refute all religious claims concerning a creator. An effort that's also often attempted to suppress scientific criticisms of Darwin's work. And there we get to the conspiracy.
Well, and also it's so telling to me when I hear these sort of supposed refutations of scientific thinking. It's almost like these people, the ones who are making these criticisms, can't imagine believing in something based on looking at the evidence. Instead, they're thinking, oh, the evolutionists must have their version of God and they must worship him. And they think that everything he says is the truth. And they just believe what he says blindly because that's what we do. And if we can just show them that Darwin made a mistake, then everything will fall apart, without realizing that we don't care if Darwin made any mistakes. Darwin was mistaken about a great many things. That's not the point. It doesn't matter. And I probably shouldn't have phrased that as a us versus them, but it's telling when I think when these arguments always come back to, oh, they just don't want to hear that Darwin was wrong. Well, that's irrelevant.
Yeah, it is literally like it's a projection thing. And it's set up to be a balance, which is, you know what, this is the same as this. And so you pick your side. Do you want to be on the side of God or on evil? Okay. How'd we do?
Oh, these are the answers to the quiz.
Oh, here's the quiz. So my question, number one, what did most people have for number one?
So let's look up at the poll.
Okay, I'm sharing the results now. So it looks like for number one, the most popular answer was answer choice B, diversifying selection.
Woo! Nicely done. Yes, actually, so diversifying selection is when selection is pushing for traits in opposite directions. Directional is the selection is in one way. Stabilizing is when it goes for the average, and artificial is when humans do it. So diversifying selection for the win. Woohoo.
So what was directional again? How did you
Wow.
describe that?
Directional selection is when selection is for an extreme end of, like if you put a bell curve. So directional is for one end of the bell curve. So it pushes the trait in one direction, as opposed to pushing the trait in both directions and against the average.
Okay.
Ah,
Okay.
okay.
Number two, not a mechanism of evolution.
Okay, the most popular answer on that one was answer choice D, independent assortment.
I don't even know what that means. I would have guessed genetic drift if I could take this poll.
Okay, so natural selection is Darwin's idea that selects for traits that help with survival. And so it results in adaptations. So it's not that one. Sexual selection is a type of natural selection that results in traits related to mating. By the way, for Darwin Day, I made a fun sexual selection video. It's out there if you want to see it. It's really stupid, but it's also really fun because it's biology and you get to talk about sex and peacocks.
So since you mentioned it, what are you doing on Darwin Day, Melanie?
I am going to be with Bailey Harris with the Freedom from Religion Foundation.
And
Yeah.
they have something going on online that people can attend?
They do. It is online. It is at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Follow me. I will share there. It's really, Bailey has a new book about Darwin, and I wrote the foreword for her new book. And Bailey is wonderful. And
Oh,
by the
cool.
way, the book comes out in August, so pre-order it. It would help her out a lot. But also, she is amazing. Like, we need more science communicators like Bailey.
So Bailey Harris is a very young author. She I think she wrote her first books at 13, I think it was. She spoke at SciCon at 15 years old. It was like I said, what was I doing at 15? Not speaking at science conferences.
Yeah, she's one of those that makes me feel like, what am I doing with my life? At 18, she's already accomplished so much.
I think you're doing pretty well.
Oh, thank you. So about genetic drift is what happens, the loss of genes in small populations. So it is a mechanism of evolution, but this
Oh.
actually is random.
Mm.
Independent assortment is one of the ways that meiosis, or the cell division that results in gametes, leads to variation. So independent assortment for the win. Nicely done. Okay, what human ancestor was the first to be found widespread outside of Africa?
Okay, so the most common
Oh.
answer for this one was Homo erectus.
Oh man, so I was going to say the third one.
Homo
Homo
naledi?
naledi?
Yeah.
So Homo naledi is found outside of Africa, but it evolved outside of Africa probably and is not
That's
widespread.
not widespread though. Okay. Hmm.
Australopithecus and Ardipithecus were both only in Africa. So Australopithecus afarensis, you may know as Lucy,
Ah.
and Ardipithecus ramidus, also known as Artie. And Kara, you're gonna have to send that song, because like at this point, I just gotta hear that song.
Oh yeah. I can pull up the song.
So wait,
Or I
so,
can save it for the hangout.
so was Homo erectus the right? I thought that was
Yes, it is the right answer.
really.
Yes.
All right, stick around for the hangout and we'll play the Ardipithecus ramidus song.
Okay.
I love biology. Number 4. What do you think? Number 4.
Okay, number 4, we had the most common answer was the Y chromosome.
I would have gone for the one I don't understand what it means at all, which is a nuclear autosomal DNA.
Oh, and
Okay.
the question was, which of the following is the least useful for tracing distant ancestry?
So it is A. So
I got
nuclear
one right, just because I don't know what it means.
Yay.
nuclear DNA is the DNA in the nucleus, the ones that we think of as DNA. And autosomes are of the 23 pairs of chromosomes, the 22 non-sex chromosomes. Now, the problem with using nuclear autosomal DNA to trace ancestry is every generation it jumbles up a lot, right? Chromosomes are changing DNA and so on, and so you can only go back probably like 4 to 6 generations before it just becomes so much of a mixture that it becomes not very helpful. The Y chromosome is one of the sex chromosomes. And if you, so this is I'm trying to show scale here. If this is the X chromosome, the Y chromosome is like this big. And so it's so small that it doesn't tend to exchange DNA with the X, which means it's usually inherited in full. And because of that, it can be used to trace deep ancestry directly through the male line. Mitochondrial DNA we were just talking about endosymbiosis. Mitochondria have their own DNA, but because the egg cell is like this and the sperm is like this, the egg cell contains all of the organelles and such inside of it, including the mitochondria. So basically, all the mitochondria inherited only through the maternal line. And so because of that, we can taste deep ancestry. Something fun for you to look up later, if you want to learn more about this, are mitochondrial Eve and Y chromosome Adam, which are the male and female that are hypothesized to be the most recent common ancestor of all of humanity. But it's
Oh yeah, and speaking of misidentification and clickbait stuff, oh, when those came to the light in the science journals, that became, they have found Eve, they have found Adam.
yeah. Even Adam probably didn't live at the same time or in the same place. Uh,
Also, like you said the answer when you were describing it, the most recent common ancestor of all currently living humans, not the oldest ancestor of all humans. It's the most recent common ancestor.
And they weren't even a couple, were living at the same time and
Yeah,
place.
they probably were. But it's also it's not the first human, the first,
Right.
Right.
but the one to whom everyone alive today can trace their ancestry.
Yes.
My husband, because he's descendant of slaves on both sides of his family, I've gotten him mitochondrial DNA and Y chromosome DNA tests to see like where he could trace his family back to, and that only can happen these deep lineages because they don't mix every generation.
Mm.
So 23andMe uses both of those techniques, I presume?
No. And the one that we used at the time, they don't do it anymore, which is really frustrating. It was, I may have to give that to you later. Because one of the companies, I specifically looked for a company that did nuclear DNA, Y chromosome, and mitochondrial.
Oh,
And
wow.
Wow.
so if you want a deep ancestry, look into deep ancestry for your family, that's what you want to look at. But remember that for mitochondrial DNA, you're getting your mom and her mom and her mom and her mom. And so every generation you're missing half. So it is useful, but you're missing a lot.
Mhm.
Okay, DNA contains the instructions for building proteins, true or false?
Okay, the most popular answer was true.
So I said false. Am I wrong again?
Yeah, you're wrong.
You were thinking of RNA, weren't
That's
you,
exactly
Rob?
right. I thought DNA
Yeah.
created RNA and RNA created the proteins.
Well, no, it's true. But what DNA tells cells how to do is it's the order of amino acids in a protein. So I love asking my students, so what does DNA do? And they're like, I don't know, some sort of magic. It tells cells how to make traits, or it carries the instructions. Okay, but what are the instructions? Specifically, it is how to build proteins.
Hmm.
Okay. In which state would you expect to find the most endemic species?
Okay, the most popular answer to this one was Hawaii.
I said Florida.
I said California.
Okay, Rob, I'm getting really comfortable with telling you you're wrong.
This is why I became a mechanical engineer.
If it makes you feel any better, I don't even entirely know what a mechanical engineer does. So it is Hawaii.
Oh. So is it because it's an island and it's isolated?
So yes.
Okay.
What is an endemic species?
It's native to that area, right? Is that what that means?
And is not found elsewhere?
It is only found there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this gets to one of the major drivers of evolution, which is isolation. Which is why then, like the Galapagos, Darwin was
Mhm.
heavily influenced by the Galapagos because he's seeing all these things in the Galapagos Islands that don't live anyplace else. Why would a god make these tortoises, but only put them on these islands? And in
What?
particular, only put certain tortoises on certain islands.
Right. And why did he make the emperor penguin swim all the way from Antarctica all the way up to the equator and then change? Because there are penguins there. I saw penguins without going to the Antarctic.
Okay, when a scientific theory is proven, it will become a law.
Okay, the most popular answer here was false.
Please tell me I got this one right. I guessed false also.
Yeah, it is false.
Oh.
This is a very common misconception, and I'm so glad that your audience, a theory is an explanation that's well supported, and it's usually combining multiple related explanations into an overarching one. So, like cell theory is a theory, germ theory, theory of gravitation or relativity. And it is not a hierarchy. A theory will never become a law. A law is a description, a theory is an explanation. And we don't prove in science. I think, Nikki, weren't you the one who said that earlier?
Yeah, I said that. Yeah, I said that in the pregame show.
Very
Yes,
good.
I got that right. Physics, I'm not too bad at because, like, mechanical engineering, although you don't know what that is, it does rely on physics. It doesn't rely on biology at all.
So there's no sex involved, which makes it way less interesting.
Unless you make robots that, do that sort of thing. So, you can make robots, just saying. And they are making robots now.
Which fossil is considered an important link between dinosaurs and birds?
Okay, the most popular answer was Archaeopteryx.
That was my guess.
Yes. Yes.
All
So
right.
Tiktaalik is a link between fish and tetrapods, which are the amphibians, birds, mammals, and Pakicetus is an ancestor of whales and dolphins that was a land-based animal.
Wow. I have to say, we have a pretty well-educated group here at RfRx. People did well on that quiz. I think the audience did better than the hosts on that
Mhm.
one.
Mhm.
So
But
the reason I asked these questions actually, and I love how well that you did. It was a bit diabolical, and I apologize for that. But my point here is that my guess is everyone in this audience accepts evolution. That said, actually understanding evolution requires a lot of understanding, a lot of knowledge. And this is I took all of these questions, by the way, from my non-majors biology class. This
Oh
is
no, so
not,
we should know these answers.
not necessarily. My point is not that at all. My point is the reason that we're accepting evolution isn't because we know that much about evolution necessarily. It's because we put our trust in the right place. It's not about knowledge or intelligence. We have just aligned our beliefs with sources that happen to be right. And there's some humility in my mind that comes along with this, recognizing that when we're talking to creationists, it's not necessarily facts that are going to change their mind, because it wasn't facts that caused us to accept evolution. So I know we have more poll question. Can we leave that one to the end? Because that one's really fun.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, we'll talk about the last poll question at the end. Don't let me forget, y'all. We'll come back to the dogs, cats, and spiders question.
So why do creationists reject evolution? It is not about facts. Back to the elephant and the writer. Our elephant is motivated by things like our identity, our values, our emotions. And when we're having a conversation with somebody else, maybe a creationist like me, former me, look, I wouldn't have listened to current me when it came to here's the facts of evolution, because that's not why I didn't accept it. We think this is a writer conversation, but this is an elephant conversation. So if you want to reach someone like past me, current me may want to say, well, here's all the reasons why you're wrong and what should change your mind. I would have stood a better chance at digging down to why past me held those beliefs. It's not about facts. It's actually about the implications of that belief, right? It is accepting evolution means the Bible is wrong. It means there is no God. It means there is no purpose. It means my identity and my tribe are wrong. It's not because they're stupid. It's not because they don't have facts, but because they think evolution is incompatible with believing in a God. And they don't like the implications of that. All right, back to my story. Like I'm a biologist now. I went on to study. I wanted to be a vet, right? So, high school creationist me went off to college. I wanted to be a veterinarian. I did actually go to vet school, and then I realized I did not want to spend my life spaying, neutering, and euthanizing, and so I went to grad school instead. It was not my biology classes that changed my mind. What happened was, I might get a little emotional here. I was taught that God made man in his image. God is man, of course, and man is godlike. And then God made woman out of man to serve him as a helper, as Genesis says. And then her sin and temptation of Adam is the cause for everything that's bad in the world. And so she must spend all of eternity atoning for those sins. When I was in high school, my mom's Sunday school teacher got sick, and they needed a long-term sub. And so she offered to substitute, and it ended up going all the way to the church board, and then having a change in rules where basically it was decided that women could only teach men under the age of 16. could only cook, clean, daycare. There was a woman master of Sunday schools. They went to her house to tell her husband why she should not do that anymore. Changed the locks on the door so that she could no longer have access to things. I remember being really confused. Now, my mom, if she's watching, look, I love you. You taught me well. She's a very strong woman, and she would tell me, Melanie, you could do anything anybody with a penis can do, except for pee, standing up. She's wrong about that, by the way.
It's just a little bit more
Yeah,
messy.
you
A little bit.
definitely can.
Think you can.
Right where there's a will, there's a way. But I remember thinking, like, Mom, I don't understand. You're telling me that I don't need a man, and my church is telling me that I have some preordained reason for why I'm a lesser human being. And at one point, the youth minister came to my house to tell me what my place was. And I was so conflicted. So I went off to college, and I remember I was in World Civ 1, so ancient civilizations. And the professor was talking about the different ancient river civilizations, like the Mesopotamian, ancient Egypt, the Indus Valley, ancient China, and the different gods that they had created and how they were a reflection of the different environmental conditions. Like some had more like flooding and droughts, and some were more stable, and their gods were either unpredictable or wrathful or like peace loving and calm. And I still remember, like, I know how memory works. So if there's a chance that what I'm remembering is not actually what happened, but it was literally a moment in class. As she kept talking, I remember like grabbing the desk and feeling like this like mushroom cloud go off, and oh, holy shit. Maybe God didn't make man, maybe man made God. And based on the gods that I was being taught, wow, like, look, if I was a dude, I would totally make that God too. But it had never occurred to me that God was a reflection of man. And I'm still dealing with the trauma of this today. And I gotta tell you, like, seeing little girls being taught this stuff still breaks my heart. Um, But for me, it was looking back, what changed my mind wasn't the evidence. I was primed, right? It was my identity. I was being taught that I was less of a human being. And so, changing your mind, you risk losing your community. Not only were you wrong, and I was honestly, in this case, happy to be wrong about this, but I lost my community. I would have loved to have had someone like you in my life at that time, and I didn't. So I was floundering for a bit, and I was trying to find other people who not only had similar beliefs as me, but understood how harmful this kind of misogyny and supposedly supernaturally ordained misogyny was. All that's to say, what didn't change my mind was facts. It wasn't even biology. It was something else. It was my elephant. And so I see today, I am a biologist and I'm a science communicator, and I hear a lot of people talking to people who are creationists or making fun of creationists. And look, I get, looking back on those arguments, they're really stupid. And part of me goes, wow, I actually believe that stuff. Yeah, I did. And I had reasons for believing it. The more we've sacrificed, staked our reputation, spent, put our personal identity on things, the more we've been mocked, the harder it is to convince people, the harder it is to admit that we're wrong. If we want to reach people, then having the empathy, the humility, and connecting with people with where they are has a much better chance. So, in summary here, look, we can all be fooled. I'm writing a book on misinformation now. I talk a lot about misinformation, and one of the like truisms almost every time I talk about misinformation is people go, yeah, misinformation. Wow, that's such a big problem. Can you believe those people are so stupid? Can you believe all that stuff they fall for? And the longer the conversation goes on, the closer I get to hitting the misinformation that they fall for, because we all have it. We all have it. We can all be fooled. It is so much easier to see false beliefs in others than it is in ourselves. But it's nearly impossible that all of our beliefs are right. So again, being humble enough to realize we could be wrong. I have just yesterday, I spent the day with different friends who are all believers in God. And I was telling them when I was doing this talk and how personal this was for me. And again, they all believe in God. They don't believe in young earth creationism, but nevertheless, they feel attacked by people who are atheists. They feel like people mock them and look down on them. And whether that's true or not, that is their perception. And their beliefs aren't inherently harmful. I mean, mine were harmful, and I really wish we would stop teaching little kids that. But they provide them with comfort. To me, the question is, what is your goal? Is our goal to help people understand reality? Like, evolution is the single most unifying theory in all of life sciences. It is impossible to understand life without understanding evolution. But dunking on them and just trying to shove facts down their throats is not going to win them over. We're all doing our best to understand the world around us. And so connecting with them at that human level, and even separating, there are some things that are evidence-based and some things that aren't. Whenever I see a scientist say, well, science has disproven God, no, it hasn't. It can't. Science has proven God. No, it hasn't. It can't. God is not a falsifiable concept. There are claims like young earth, created kinds, those are testable claims. And it's important to separate those out, but not just for us, but when talking to other people as well. That critical thinking process of helping them understand what kinds of things are evidence-based and what aren't. Where do we draw the line on what kinds of things hurts people and what doesn't hurt people? And also remembering that we could be wrong and to be kind to other people. Thank you so much for this. This has been a really interesting experience for me.
Thank you so much for sharing this and this, your personal story. Very interesting. And wow. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
I, as people here know, I was raised Catholic and was never a young earth creationist, didn't think anything in the Old Testament was true. And I didn't have to deal with that kind of a transformation of my worldview. But I talked to so many people who did go through that and are going through that, and that is so complicated, where they just are taught not to trust science.
Yeah, that definitely was something I could relate to, Melanie, your story of being in a class at school and finding out, oh, wait, none of this stuff is right after all. I had a similar experience. And I think that's why in some of those groups, they may discourage, especially girls going off to school to, then you might learn about science and that's how they get you. And in a way, it kind of is. You might find out that there were some holes in the thinking that you.
Bailey Harris, that we mentioned before, because Melanie is going to be with her on Wednesday. She did a tour of the Ark Encounter on her own and made a video of it, and she's posing in front of the sign where the big snake is wrapped around I think it's the final thing in the tour of the museum, which basically says, if they can teach you that in heaven, that the flood did not happen, you might believe that heaven and hell are not real. And yeah, that's true. And then she said one of the final exhibits there was like people just in school and like in university, and the plaque on the outside said something like, the university is where they teach you about the evils of scientism. And the way Bailey put it was, yeah, kids, go to school because you'll learn the truth.
Well, I put Melanie's links in the chat. Definitely check those out. Especially I have recently shared some of the writings from the Thinking is Power website with some friends as we were
Cool. So
evaluating
I want to read some
certain.
of those for people who are going to see this later and can't see the chat. Right. So
Yeah.
Melanie's website is thinkingispower.com. And her
Yes.
Facebook is Thinking Powers. Instagram is the same, Thinking Powers. YouTube also at Thinking Powers. And TikTok. You do TikTok now is Thinking Powers. That's great.
Yes.
Okay, TikTok has the best cat videos. I'm gonna miss it if it goes away.
That's right. Oh yeah.
Oh,
Speaking
yep.
of cats,
Question number 9.
we have to do question number 9 before we go to the actual Q&A. Which of the following companion animal species self-domesticated? And we had a pretty even split between dogs and cats, with dogs just a hair ahead, and a few people did vote for spiders in that one.
So I did not vote for spiders, so I know I'm not wrong there. But I am actually not sure about I know the history of the dogs and the cats, but I would think they were both self-domesticated, so I'm not clear on this. So what's the story, Melanie?
Yeah, actually, that's fascinating because spiders, they didn't necessarily domesticate and that they're not companions, but they have selected themselves to be part of our habitats. How spiders, like, whenever I see a spider in my house, the tendency is to take it outside so that, it lives, but it's probably going to die because it's adapted to my house. And if it's in my house, so there's a theory in ecology called foraging theory, which is basically you find animals where their food is. So if they're in your house, they're there because they've got something to eat. So they're pest control. But what I was going for, before Carrie threw that wrench in the question, was cats. So dogs are a great example where we've particularly selected for characteristics, either for companionship or hunting or whatever it is. Cats, somewhere along the way, probably we had our little civilization and we had food storage and so on. And um, cats were preying on the kinds of animals that were pests and eating our food. And we're like, oh, that's a cute little animal. I'll give you some food. And the cats were like, oh, sure, I'll be part of this. And so they did. They selected us. They much more so than dogs, and they retain that wild character more than dogs do. And
So I saw the modern reincarnation of the Cosmos series with Neil deGrasse Tyson, and I'm pretty sure the first episode, or maybe the second of the first series, covered the dogs, and it looked to me like they were self-domesticating. It was like wolves hanging out with the cave people, and they'd throw them some food, so the babies would be even more likely to do that. Isn't
So
that
that's
self-domesticating?
That's one hypothesis for the
Mm.
domestication of dogs. There are others, though, and I don't think that it's settled
Oh,
what we
interesting. So
actually
what are the
have.
others? That was the first time I've ever heard that story, and that was the only story of that I've ever heard.
So that's the one that's really popular. Like they made that movie. I think there was a movie a few years back where like they find the puppies and they start raising them or something like that. Um, or I guess that's a different version, but uh, some of the ideas are one of them is that basically the dogs started hanging around. They found scraps and were eating our trash and things like that, and kind of became friendly with us. There's others that have more to do with dogs as like hunting partners and like actually used specifically for hunting. Oh, Melanie is showing us something.
yeah, I want to show you, like, this is absolutely wonderful. I don't know if you can see this. This is one of my favorite.
I'll spotlight it.
Okay.
It's blurry though for some reason. Zoom doesn't like it. It's making it blurry.
Yeah. Okay. So at the top is a wolf, and it says, maybe I'll get some food at the campfire. What's the worst that could happen? And then
Right.
10,000 years later, there's a like Chihuahua.
That's good. That is
We have
good.
certainly altered
Yeah.
their direction.
And to be clear, by the way, wolves and dog breeds are still the same species, correct? Is that right? Am I right about that?
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
amazing. That is freaking amazing. And yet you see two birds that look identical. No, that's a different species of finch. It's like, it's amazing to me.
Biology is awesome. And Rob, I have to. I've shared in the comments my video on sexual selection. I have one on speciation that I absolutely love, and it gets to heart of what you're saying. So I'll put it in the chat if anybody wants a fun laugh later.
I love it. I am all about learning more about the dogs. Um, Something that I learned that was really interesting one time when I was doing some reading was, and Melanie, you'll know more about this than I do, but something specifically to do with dog DNA and the way their genetics work, was that they, as opposed to some other species like humans, it's very easy for them to show like physical changes with a low number of generations between them. Like if you start selectively breeding dogs, you can generate like noticeable like phenotypic changes right away. Like, oh, we want them to have different shape ears. We want their fur to be a different way. We want them to be a different size. You can breed those changes into them relatively quickly in a short number of generations, whereas it might take much longer in some other species. And so that is apparently one of the other reasons why we have so many of these different like designer dog breeds and things. They're like easy to make really quickly. I don't know if you have a more scientific way to describe that process than I did.
I've not heard that, but I actually get it. So I don't know about that. But this is
Okay.
what's referred to as artificial selection, where humans are selecting for characteristics that we want, and it's resulting in breeds. Fun fact, Darwin was highly influenced by sexual selection. And his idea was that um, if humans could select for existing variation to result in these different characteristics, maybe nature could do it too. One of the things that really influenced him was pigeon breeds. And like, if you look at pigeon breeds, some of them are just like, wow. I don't know what the technical terms are, but like I call them feathers on their feet. They're like literally feet with what looks like wings, or like some of them have these necks that are so big that their heads are like pointing off in this other direction. They have to be hand-footed. I mean, look, they're not going to survive in the wild, but humans think it's a great trait. So by selecting for the extremes more and more, then that trait becomes more and more extreme. So again, Darwin is like, well, if humans could select for these traits, maybe the environment could select for traits as well.
Hmm.
Turns
Okay,
out.
so for people who are watching this later and don't see the chat, Melanie's video that she referred to is on her channel, Thinking is Power with Melanie Trecek-King, and it's named What is a Species? It's Complicated.
Ooh, I like it.
And like biology, it's all about sex. So
Yay, there you go. That's a good teaser. Okay, well, we are just about at the end of time. You think we have time for like one or two questions? Huh? Huh? All right. Hearing no objections, let's do a couple of questions. Rob, do you want to do a question first?
Oh, I can't. Oh my God, there are so many, so many, so many. All right, let's see. Okay, this one is probably one of the more, the answers would be the more helpful. So, what's your best tip for protecting yourself against pseudoscience and being on the right side of truth?
well, that's a really good question. So as a non-expert in any particular area, the most reliable form of knowledge at any given time is the consensus. And so the best that you could do would be to search for what the consensus is. It requires the skepticism to question your beliefs, and finding a consensus can be difficult. So I do have an article on that on my website. It's how to do your own research. Um, basically, not all consensuses are documented because oftentimes, so I have a good friend. Do you know the 97% consensus on climate change? Have you heard that statistic?
Yeah, it keeps going up.
It does. His original study is John Cook, was 97%. Various studies have documented anywhere between 91 and 99 or even 100%. Nevertheless, his is often talked about. When he wrote that study, when he proposed that study, the reviewers were like, yeah, we actually don't need to document the consensus. Everybody all the scientists are fully aware that there's a consensus on anthropogenic climate change. So what is it that you're adding here that's new? And so he altered his study and did actually add something to it, but that's not the part that went viral in the public, because the public weren't aware that there was a consensus. So the lesson there for me is that oftentimes there is a consensus, but scientists haven't actually thought to quantify or document it, because if you're an expert in that area, it's really obvious. It's only tends to be documented in cases where, in the public at least, it is controversial, or there seems to be some other pressing need to do it. Depending on the type of study, on the field, it would be anywhere from like a consensus report to it might be like a guideline by one of the professional bodies. If you can't find a consensus, it doesn't mean that there isn't one, but it might mean that scientists haven't actually thought to try and document it.
Right. Or they might think it's silly. So this has come up because I'm a Wikipedia editor, right? Sometimes we'll be adding information on self-professed psychic medium sites, right? And people push back and go, everybody knows psychics aren't real. You don't have to say anything about it. Or you need to find a scientific article that says this is bullshit. Well, scientists, they all know it's bullshit, and no one does any studies to prove psychic powers aren't real. So that's actually a problem.
Yeah, actually, along those lines, be really wary of a study that says, like, I could go to Google Scholar and I can type in pretty much anything and find a study that says almost anything. I see people do this all the time in the comments. Sometimes that study doesn't say what they think it says. Sometimes it's a study that is published in a low quality journal. It hasn't been replicated. The question is, how does that fit into the larger body of evidence? And that's the hard part, because unless you're an expert in that particular area, you don't know what the rest of the evidence says. The news adds on to this and makes it can be challenging, because the news likes things that are new and sexy and from the something that seems like new and unusual, but that built into that definition means that it's not something that's necessarily part of established science. Established science isn't sexy enough to be reported on. So something like psychics, a study that says something like, I know what you're, there's a few studies out there. I forget what the scientist name is, but he has supposedly documented psychic powers. But the problem is he is it's called the round bin, where only the unique ones are the ones that get published, and all the negative results or the null results don't get published. And so sometimes this takes a lot of critical thinking and contextualizing. The most important thing to keep in mind is an awareness of ourselves. We fall for misinformation, not just because of the information itself, but because of us, what we want to believe or what we don't want to believe. And so we need to be aware of our vulnerabilities and to be honest with ourselves if we want to be objective about something.
Well, I think that is a great point to end on. And we are about at time. So, what do you say we wrap up and head over to the Hangout? Melanie, thank you so much for joining us. This was fantastic. And I am so glad that you decided to tell us more about your personal story, because I think that made it so much more impactful for a lot of people here who can definitely relate and went through some of those same kind of harmful beliefs that you did. And you definitely give us hope that we can make it to the other side and have better ways to evaluate the information that's coming in. So thank you for sharing this. This is so important.
I'm really glad you decided to do that, Melanie.
Thank you. And thank you for all that you do. Really.
Ah,
I wish I had had you in my life.
oh, I wish I had had us too. So you are definitely paying it forward. That's what we try to do every week. So thank you for that and for sharing those resources with us. And stick around, everybody, for the hangout. Don't forget to join us next week, same time, same channel. We have Secular Rarity, as well as upcoming guests include Andrea Love, Abby Hafer, Natalia Pasternak. Did I say that right, Rob?
Close enough. Pasternak.
Pasternak, Neil the 604 Atheist, Stephen Novella, Mallory Mackey, and Erica Matthews, all coming up soon. And don't forget to follow us on the social medias. It helps other people find us. But again, feel free not to share and like and subscribe if that's going to out yourself to your community, if that is important to you. But if you're okay with it, please do share, so others can find us and make use of the services. And with that, Rob, how else can people get involved if they also want to pay it
I
forward
will
as it
tell them,
were?
by the way, trivia on Natalia Pasternak. She's the Jennifer Lawrence of Brazil. Just saying. So yeah, so a little backstory just quickly on her. She runs a science institute in Brazil, and she was all over TV trying to say how important it is to mask up and get vaccines when the pandemic started. And she was on a TV show where the hosts were basically making light of the entire situation. And she started like, she went ballistic and like, you're not listening to us or whatever. And so that got related to the movie that had just been released, Don't Look Up, where Jennifer Lawrence's character does that on a TV show when the hosts are making fun of her saying an asteroid's going to hit the Earth. So yeah, she became the Jennifer Lawrence of Brazil.
Oh, I love it. Okay, now I get the connection.
Yeah. So, okay. Yes. What'd you ask me to talk about? The social media.
Volunteering.
Volunteering. Yes, so we here have learned that healing can come from helping others, and volunteers here find meaning and purpose by volunteering with recovering from religion. All of the services we provide are by volunteers. None of us get any of the big atheist bucks because there isn't any big atheist bucks. We're always in need of volunteers. If you got the time and inclination, please consider that. You go to our website, and there's a form that you get by clicking on the volunteer button at the very top. We're in need of all sorts of people to work here. Besides working the helplines and the chat line, we need people to find and vet and post good resources for the resources page that Kara had told you about. They told you earlier about how that's useful to both the clients and volunteers, and we need people to do that. We need people to host the support groups that we told you about, also to support the online Slack community. To each of the channels gets moderated. We need people to do IT work. And even what we're doing right here now, hosting these shows and then also editing them and getting them on the interweb so even more people can watch them. So as I said, volunteer, fill out the form on our main page, or go to recoveringfromreligion.org/volunteer. And as a last thing, I will tell you, there's a 3-minute video at the bottom of our main page called RFR What We Do. And it's a great resource because it's only 3 minutes long and it goes through everything it took us 15 minutes to tell you about at the beginning of this, that you can send to friends and family and anyone else you think might be in need of our services.
All right. Well, thank you, Rob. And with that, let's bring on Dr. Ray to wrap us up for the evening. If he's here, I see
I'm
Amelia.
here, and I
Oh.
have Amelia on the screen. I just want to tell Melanie, Amelia is a human. She's convinced of it, but she didn't come from no damn monkeys. That's just what she told me.
She's self-domesticated.
And she's a creationist. No, she domesticated me. I didn't domesticate her. I have one question for you, Melanie, and you almost answered the question a couple times, but I'm going to come back. At what age would you have needed us, and what would you be calling us for help about?
Oh, that's a really good question. Or it was around probably 20 that I had my deconversion moment and was really struggling after that. And probably the part that bothered me the most, the part that that harmed me the most was the misogyny. And if I'm being really honest here, when I'm old, so this was like really internet days. The atheists that I was finding were almost just as sexist as the Christians that I was leaving. And so it was probably going to be to find some place for community and to help me understand where all the misogyny was coming from.
Right. That's good. I'm glad to hear that. I think there's a lot of cultural misogyny just built in, and it's a big part of because we're so dominated by the patriarchal religions, for sure. Well, if you enjoyed what you heard here tonight, folks, I hope you'll come back again in the future, hear other talks, and I hope you'll also support us. You can go to our website and donate. We'll be doing all sorts of stuff this year. We've got some new initiatives coming up. Gail and I and the board have been working on what are we going to do to expand in Europe and the United Kingdom. So late this year, we're going to be spending some of the donor funds on going there and trying to raise awareness on things like religious trauma and getting more volunteers and getting other organizations to work with us and just use our resources. So thank you. If you can donate a little bit, if you can't, let people know about us anyway, because we're here to help.